Lights, camera, action.
Greetings and salutations, boys and girls. Max here for Mellow Media, and welcome to part 3 of making your digital mixes that you do in the box sound more analog. So in our first 2 episodes, we covered a lot of foundational information that basically brought us to this point, which is a bit more technical in that how sample rates affect your mix when it comes to it sounding more analog. Now we have some great examples for you today, and we have a great episode subsequently. Now if you missed the previous 2 because it gives a lot of context, be sure to check those out first. Alright, on to today's lesson. See you on the other side. So now that we have taken your sound from vanilla to just more flavorful, we can move on to level 3. So one of the main differences between analog and digital is digital has to conform to sample rates and bit depths. Analog is unencumbered by this. In fact, it doesn't really exist in the analog realm. Now, when you record your music onto your computer or you store it, it is stored in a form of ones and zeros. Those ones and zeros represent sample points on a waveform. The standard is for music to get sampled a minimum of 44,100 times. That is a sample rate of 44.1 or 44,100. So when your music is recorded, it gets sampled 44,100 times. Let's try that again.
Listen properly.
When your music is recorded, it gets sampled 44,100 times per second. That is an incredible amount of times when you think about it. Now, what we have discovered is when you sample the audio more times per second, you could possibly get better quality. So why would more sample points result in a better quality wave? This is what we're going to get into, and while I prefer generally recording at 96 kilohertz, it just sounds better to me. I know this is controversial, but I just hear a bit more in the low mids, and highs. But let me not get ahead of myself. So what does sample rates have to do with something sounding more analog? Well, that's a good question that you asked. As great as digital is at recording and storing music without compromising the sound quality, one of its fatal flaws is aliasing.
Fatal?
What?
You said fatal flaws. Like, that's dramatic.
What?
I mean, like, aliasing is not fatal, though.
I mean, like, I die a little inside every time aliasing happens, and, you know, especially when I can hear it. But okay, so maybe the word fatal is a bit hyperbolic, so let's say flaw. Okay, so a flaw of digital music is aliasing.
Spitter.
Delving deep into the Nyquist theorem is beyond the scope of this tutorial, but let's do this for those that haven't heard about this concept before. So right, human hearing is 20/20. That means we can hear sound as low as 20 hertz and we can perceive sound up to 20,000 hertz. Everything that we understand and enjoy about music has been centered around this idea and understanding. What the Nyquist theorem basically states that in a digital system, for something to be accurately captured and represented, you need at least 2 sample points per frequency. The human ear can hear up to 20,000 hertz. So in order to represent 20,000 hertz accurately, we need 40,000 samples. 44,100 samples will capture up to 22,050. And that would seem enough, you would think, but you would be wrong to think that. There are things that exceed the Nyquist limit, this 22,050 hertz. I found that snares do, hats and other cymbals can, vocals as well, especially synths, as we will demonstrate shortly. So when a sound source exceeds the 22,050 hertz in the digital system, weirdly enough, they didn't design it so that it simply goes, cool, I guess we'll just cut this part off. No, it actually decides to fold the parts that it didn't sample accurately back onto the parts that it sampled accurately. Let's explain. Let's think about it this way. Let's think of the Nyquist limit as a brick wall. and in your hand you have a tennis ball. Now, when you throw that tennis ball against a brick wall, it will bounce back. Now, if you don't throw it hard enough for it to reach the wall, it will not bounce back. And let's say that is information that is well within the Nyquist limit and the digital system. However, when you throw the ball hard enough for it to bounce back, that's when you get aliasing. And proportionately so, when I throw the ball hard enough for it to bounce back to me directly, we're getting a lot of aliasing with the commensurate force. So let's say something goes up to 30,000 hertz. Like I said, the information doesn't just get cut off, it bounces back. So the information will reach the Nyquist limit at 22,050 and then bounce back by the amount that is essentially left, and I wrote the math down here. So 30,000 minus 22,050 is 7,950. 22,050 minus 7,950 is 14,100. That means from 14,100 up, you will experience aliasing, as we will demonstrate in a little while. As Bruce pointed out, this won't be fatal, but that does mean that your sound is still compromised. It is no longer an accurate representation of the recording. When that tennis ball hits the wall and it bounces back, that is referred to as foldback distortion. And what happens is it actually causes phasing issues and on whatever it folds back on. And this is often characterized by a muddy, unclear, grainy top. So now what may happen is that your mix may sound dark and then you're trying to boost some air into it, and it actually has the opposite effect of getting darker, hence making the effect of aliasing and foldback distortion worse. Alright, as promised, let's demonstrate this. So I'm going to load Serum, which is a very popular synthesizer, and there you go. Let's call it, no cap, aliasing test. And it's not it's opening right at the bottom, right at the top. Started at the top, now we're here. Okay, now that we dragged it down, let us solo it. And what I'm going to use is just the default Serum sample or patch. There we go. Default Serum patch. And I'm going to load span. Let us load span. Where is the inserts? Span. And when I press it, yeah. When I press it, it's going to show you that. So what I'm going to zoom, let's leave that. What I'm going to zoom is, I'm going to zoom in on where the Nyquist limit is as represented by this red line. And since you know that Serum is there, I'm just going to put it on the other screen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Serum. And this is a bit of foreshadowing, but I'm going to switch the oversampling off and just put it on ×1. So it's now operating at the native sample rate, which is 48 kilohertz. And then I'm going to press this button. And then you're going to see these waves over here, these sound waves. And you're going to see this Nyquist limit, the brick wall we were talking about earlier. But what I want you to do, besides, the sound of the synth, there's this irritating, piercing sound, and that's the foldback distortion, and I'll demonstrate. Hear that? That's the aliasing. Now I'm going to take Serum here, I'm going to put the ×2 oversampling on, and then I'm going to press this button. Do you see the difference in the waveform? Let me take off the oversampling. Here also the difference in intensity in the sound. Switch on the oversampling. There's also, it's like I made Serum quieter because what you are also hearing is the foldback distortion, the ball bouncing back from the wall. Then I'm going to put on ×4. Now I don't think this will make a significant difference. But there you go. So you are getting foldback distortion when I do this and I zoom out. I'm switching off the oversampling. You can see by how much it actually folds back. Right? Let's press that. So you can see that the aliasing folds back quite a bit. And when I switch on the oversampling, let's do that again. You can see that the foldback distortion is gone. All that added information that created the foldback distortion is gone. Let's observe it again. It's like magic. Okay, so now we have raised an interesting question. What is oversampling? So coming back to what I said earlier, how I prefer to work at a higher sample rate, 96 kilohertz or even 88.2. That's the maths. The reason I prefer working at these sample rates is, as you have seen, you avoid aliasing distortion. So what essentially happens is that instead of the Nyquist limit being at 22,000 or even 24,000 in this case, it moves a whole octave up to 48,000. And just some basic DSP as to what happens in the plugin, the sound that Serum is generating will get upsampled. So at ×2, it will get upsampled to 96. It will get processed there, right? And that also, as you can hear, improves the integrity of the sound quality. And we will demonstrate this in Plugin Doctor. Good old Plugin Doctor. Let us just load it. But what also happens is you get a Nyquist filter being put in place. And let me go to 44.1. Let's see if it appears. Let me switch the oversampling on, and the Nyquist filter will appear. So what the Nyquist filter does is when it samples back down, because it has to sample back down to the native sample rate. So the sound is in the plugin upsamples, adds the extra sample points and processes it at a higher sample rate, because you're doing ×2, ×4, ×8, you do the quick math. When it goes back into the session at the native sample rate, I hope I'm explaining that correct. In order to mitigate aliasing, developers have put a Nyquist filter at wherever the Nyquist limit is. I think that's correct. Yes, it's correct. As you can see. Good old Plugin Doctor. Who needs to use your ears? We can use your eyes. Come on now, guys. So then, coming back to the analogy of the tennis ball. Why, I would say a lot of cases, not all cases, there are caveats. In a lot of cases, why higher sample rates is better, because, as I said, you move that wall an octave further. So if the wall was 22 meters from you, it is now 44 meters from you. And what that essentially does is, as I hopefully demonstrated, it hopefully improves the sound quality of your mixes and recordings. Okay, so a lot of foundational knowledge had to be shared just to tell you that digital systems have aliasing. And if the analog was true to form, that it would have no aliasing. When you keep in mind everything I just demonstrated, you can see why I'm a proponent and a fan of oversampling and higher sample rates. Now, there's so much more to it than just oversampling something and recording at higher sample rates, and we will cover this, but I hope that this demonstration serves as a good example of why you should consider oversampling and using analog emulations that oversample. But in case an emulation does not have oversampling, it's not the end of the world, and there are ways around it. As Bruce said, this is not fatal, but at least you know how your sound is being compromised. Now, coming back to the plugins that we showcased earlier, all the Neves that I showed you oversample, and let's just go back to them so that I can demonstrate this. So the Neve over here, it oversamples. It has up to ×16 oversamples. The Noise Ash one has oversampling. I just need to find its menu. It has up to ×8 oversampling, and as I demonstrated, these are good things. The Brainworks have said that their plugins oversample to 176. I wouldn't know this. I'm gonna have to take the word for it. What I will tell you is it sounds good. All of their plugins just sound good. And no, they are not paying me, but my name is Cornelius Max. First of his name. Dirk and the boys, hit me up. Alright, knowing what we know about oversampling and the Nyquist limit and the Nyquist filters, we can actually create our own Nyquist filters in what I call cheap oversampling. So when I was analyzing these plugin doctor things back in the day, and also going onto the YouTubes to check all of this stuff out, and I learned about the Nyquist filters that I put in place, it actually gave me an idea. What if I protect against aliasing with this cheap oversampling that I mentioned? And so what you can do, the same way you high pass something, making room for the kick or the bass at the bottom, you can low pass, making room for stuff like the snares, hi-hats, and vocals. And the stuff that you would generally low pass is the stuff that has no real chance of reaching Nyquist. So if we analyze something like a piano, let's go to it, and we have a piano right here, and we'll look at the frequency analyzer when we play it. So let's solo that piano. You will see that the information decidedly dies off. Let me just put it lower here. So as you can see, the dominant information is around the low mids, and it just tapers off. So what we can do to assist everything that is at the top, like the vocals, is by essentially limiting or minimizing the information at the top and putting a Nyquist filter, a cheap oversampling, like I have here. So I have both high pass and low pass, and as you can hear, the piano doesn't sound unnatural. It sounds fine. It's because I am not messing with the critical frequencies of the piano, just the unneeded, unnecessary ones, cleaning up what I call sonic junk. So up until I learned this, I didn't know that Nyquist and aliasing was chowing me the whole time, but then I started doing this, and you just get that smooth top end, that smooth, clean top end, because you have less things and fewer things, whatever the English is there, competing at the top. So other instruments you can do this with is also guitars. Maybe not acoustic guitars, but definitely electric guitars, as their critical information's all in the mids. I encourage you to look at the spectral analyzers that come standard with DAWs these days and see where you can essentially protect against Nyquist and just high pass to remove unneeded sonic junk from instruments. So I'll close with this. Now, I said that there are caveats to mixing at high sample rates and even oversampling, and this is well documented, that with higher sample rates and oversampling comes higher CPU usage. And that's the main reason I don't mix at 96. So as you can see, this session is at 48 and 24-bit, which is quite standard. And the reason being, if we look at my CPU meter here at the bottom, it is about, I don't know what that is. It's not quick maths, but it's right up there. I'm using quite a bit of it, and that's at 48. So when I'm mixing at 96, I'm essentially halving my resources. But what I found was, and this is pretty awesome, that you don't use as much CPU when you oversampling at 48 as you would when you are mixing at 96. However, I also found that mixing at 96 without oversampling is better, gives you better sound quality than upsampling at 48. So continuing on from that, another reason I don't mix at 96 is, why set up a session that you can't mix? Why have a session where you're struggling to express yourself, you're constantly looking at your CPU meters, and you working with dropouts and probably and blue screens of death.
The irony.
You're constantly working with dropouts and probably blue screens of death. Had to really be careful the way I said that so that it can come out properly this time. Blue screens of death. So that's not how you want to work. So work at a sample rate that works. What I hopefully gave you is insight and knowledge at what may be plaguing your mixes and recordings, and you didn't even know it. And I gave you a way to hopefully guard against it and mitigate and alleviate. That's the English. To alleviate the effects of aliasing. Been filming for hours now, so I know this is going to be a long one. Whoo! You know, I was doing proof of concepts, and the proof of concept video, spitting bars, y'all, bars. And the proof of concept videos were like 10 minutes, 15 at most. Then I decided to write scripts, and these are going to be a doozy. You might need to break them up. But it turned out better for sure, because now I got to communicate a lot of fundamental concepts. Now, if you stayed until the end and you enjoyed this, thank you so much for watching the whole video. We covered a lot, but I hope that you learned a lot. I hope that this is something that switched light bulbs on, and that definitely makes it into your philosophy, your methodology, and just the way you go about mixing, because that's why I'm here. Mike Larry, you're safe now. You know, that's why I'm here. I'm here to do these things, impart the knowledge that I let's sip some Man United tears. Now that we have done that, we're ready. I'm here to impart the knowledge that I have essentially accrued and accumulated over the last 20 years. And you get this for the incredible price of giving me your like, giving me your subscribe, hitting the buttons, telling your friends about me. Max Cornelius Bruce Mello, the first of his name. Next week we have another banging episode for you guys. I'm talking about global versus nested effects. Don't forget to hit the buttons, hit the sub, the follow, so you can be notified when that episode drops. As always, love what you do and do what you love. Peace. Damn, that was a marathon.
Yes, it was.
Oh my Lord. Goodness, let's go gym.
Yeah.
Let's go gym.
Let's do it.
This looks cinematic. Let's go gym.
Bruh.
Banking.
Cut. Let's go gym.